Taschen are celebrating 40 years of publishing, and they're celebrating by reprinting some of their bestsellers in new, cheaper, smaller editions. And I'm happy to say Star Wars Archives is one of them. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm opening this and So the book, nice compact format. It's 512 pages. It's got this flap to protect it, and what you do is you fold the flap back so that you can read it, read the book. So the book has a foreword by George Lucas. There are 3 chapters on episodes 4, 5 and 6. It's available in 4 languages, in English, French, German and Spanish, and it costs $25, £20 or €20. So there are 4 stories in the book. The first story is the story of the plot of the movies, which are told through the images and through the captions. So you see there it starts with the scroll at the beginning, and then the rebel blockade runner coming in, etc., etc. The second story is the story of the making of the movie, which is in the text. And this is an oral history, so it's everybody who's worked on the movies talking about making the movies from their point of view, but mainly it's from George's point of view, George Lucas, who I spent 3 days interviewing and gave me lots of great material that he's never talked about before. So there's an overall structure of the book from the beginning to the end, where we follow George's struggle to become an independent filmmaker. Now, at the very beginning, when he was at school, at film school at USC, they could make the movies that they wanted to make, and the way they wanted, the way they cut it, who's in it, etc., etc. But when you're living in the real world, in the world of show business, working for studios, everybody has an opinion, everybody wants to change things. George wanted to get away from that. So after the success of Star Wars, in which he had a lot of trouble with Fox Studios in terms of budget and what he was and wasn't allowed to do. So George wanted to gain independence on The Empire Strikes Back. So he arranged for financing himself so that he could call the shots. But unfortunately, because of the long production process, just kept filming and filming, things kept going wrong, couldn't capture certain images on the screen. He ran out of money. So he had to go back to 20th Century Fox, the studio, in order to get some money back. And this is always the struggle with George, in that he wants to make sure that he gets the movie the way he sees it in his head, his vision, and it's always a matter of gaining that independence. So by the time of Return of the Jedi, George had gained financial independence. He could make the movie he wanted to make. The ILM and the production people, they overcame a lot of difficulties in the filming, and it was great. Unfortunately, at the end of filming of Return of the Jedi, George got divorced, and as he wrote here, for a whole year I was out of commission trying to figure out what went wrong. I went through a huge emotional upheaval. All the structure I had built fell apart. So that's the overall structure of the story of George trying to gain independence in order to get his vision onto the screen. So in talking to George about the philosophy behind the movies, he said it was all about the selfish and the selfless. We have Luke Skywalker as the central character. He's unformed, he's still a teenager, And it's about the people that he sees around him as role models. What do they do? How do they act? How do they react? How do they live their lives? So you've got Leia, who's completely selfless. She only thinks of others, never of herself. You've got Han Solo, who's mostly thinking about himself, in the transactions and the way he acts. But there's a little glimmer of hope for him. So Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda are Luke's spiritual guides. And what they're doing is they're preparing him for the future confrontation that they know is going to happen with his father, Darth Vader. Darth Vader is all about power. It's about power over others. And this is something that, through the experiences of interacting with Leia, with the rebels, with Han, he knows that he has an inner strength. He knows what the difference between right and wrong, and that the best way to act in the world is to be selfless, not selfish. So even though the Emperor and Vader offer Luke all this power, he refuses it. And in the end, Luke's example helps turn his father, Darth Vader, to the light side in order to restore the balance. So these are all mythological archetypes that George had actually studied when he was at college, at Modesto College. When George was 18, he had a terrible car accident where he almost died. This led him to reevaluate his life and his future. So that when George went to Modesto College, he was very interested in National Geographic magazine as a kid. So he took up anthropology, and it was there that he discovered the work of Joseph Campbell, who wrote The Hero with 1,000 Faces, which basically takes all the mythological archetypes from religions, or from all over the world, and he showed that there are certain types that reoccur in all stories that people tell themselves. And what George did was he took those archetypes, he applied them to science fantasy, to space opera, and that was the basis for Star Wars. And as he said in the book, these are rules for life for 12-year-olds. So that's really what Star Wars is all about. Now, people have asked me about the differences between this book and the big book, the XXL version that came out previously. So the first thing to say is that the XXL version had a chapter at the beginning just about George and his early life. So James Clark and I worked together in order to reduce that text from the first chapter, and we've added it to the text for episode 4 and combined them. So that text you see in the first chapter. I deleted the appendices from the XXL version, so they're not in here. The number of images have been reduced, so there's just over 1,200 in the XL version, and this version has over 500 images. But it's the same story, it's the same DNA, it's the same philosophy in the book.